Nanda. We're going to dive right into Photoshop, which is not necessarily about making images from scratch, but manipulating images that you've already got created. So go to your dock, and you should have Adobe Photoshop CS5 in there. It's the blue PS. If you don't, click on your spotlight and type in Photoshop, and it should appear. I recommend putting it in your dock. When you open it up, it's going to look a lot like this. It looks very similar to Illustrator. You got your tools on the left, and you've got your palettes on the right. If it doesn't look like that, go to Window, Workspace, Reset Essentials, and that should put everything back to how I have it. Now, we're going to talk about selections today, so the first thing we need to do is to get an image. So what I'm going to do is go to my blog. There it is. This is the image that we want. You can just right-click it and say Save Image As. And I'm just going to go ahead and save it to my desktop. I don't worry about changing the name or anything. Just make sure you save it to your desktop. Boom, there we go. And it tells me that it's been saved. I'm going to minimize everything, and you'll notice that there's that Batman logo. I'm going to right click it and say Open With. Oh, let's try that again. Open With. And we want to look for Adobe Photoshop CS5. What that's going to do is go ahead and open the image up for me, and it's nice and big. One thing in Photoshop we worry about is resolution. I'm going to go to Image Mode RGB. That stands for red, green, blue, and you'll notice that it really smoothed out the image. What I'm going to show you is if you zoom in, you're going to notice that this image is not made up of paths and shapes like we're used to in Illustrator. It's made up of individual pixels. So what you see is what you get. If I decide to color in some of these pixels, it's literally going to affect those individual pixels. There's no lines, there's no anchor points or anything that I can adjust. It literally messes with the pixels. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom back out. We're going to talk about selections today. At the top of your toolbar, you have the Move tool, which right now the background layer is locked. So we want to just double click that. We'll call it layer 0 and just hit OK. Now I can move this around, and you'll notice that the white square is still part of the image. What I want to do is take this logo apart. So a couple ways I can do that. The first, they're called marquees or selections, is the rectangle marquee or selection. Basically what that does is you can make a square or rectangle anywhere, and then using the Move tool you can cut that piece out. It's literally like cutting a picture out of a magazine. Now you want to be careful because it leaves a hole in your previous picture. So the smarter way, or the non-destructive way to do this, is to actually edit, copy, edit, paste. And what you'll notice now over here, I've got layer 1 that is just the image of square that I copied. Okay, whenever you copy and paste, it makes a new layer for you. Okay, so we're going to trash that real quick. The other option is you can use the elliptical marquee, which is a fancy word for saying a circle. You can actually make ovals with this. With this particular logo, you can see how it might be kind of useful to do that. Once again, if you use the Move tool, it literally will cut that shape out. That's the destructive way of editing. The other option is, once again, edit, copy, edit, paste. Notice down here you've got layer 1, and that makes an exact copy of that section that I've made. That's once again, non-destructive editing. I'm going to go ahead and trash that right to the little trash can right there. We're going to ignore the single row. I rarely ever use those. If you want more explanation, I can show them to you. But we're going to go right next to the lasso tool. The lasso tool is kind of what you see is what you get. If I kind of just go around this with the lasso tool, as imprecise and messy as it is, and go ahead and close it, you've got to close it where you started, it goes ahead and makes the selection, and then once again it cuts that out. Now most of us don't have a steady enough hand to get around this Batman logo with just the lasso tool, but some people are good. So what I'd like you to do is use the lasso tool to go ahead and go around this. You can pause the video if you want, and either cut it, or you can copy and paste it. Notice every time you copy and paste, you get a new layer. which shows you the terrible job I did cutting it out. Okay, go ahead and try that. Next up is called the Polygon Lasso tool. The Polygon Lasso tool is kind of like the pen tool. It makes straight lines, and you don't have to hold it. You can kind of just click. So it's not as difficult as the lasso tool because I don't necessarily have to hold it and try to be steady. It just makes straight lines for me, which for cutting out geometric shapes is pretty handy. However, this one, you know, there's a lot of curves in it and stuff like that, so it's not necessarily the ideal way, but it is a little more handy than the lasso. And you want to make sure that you bring it right back to where you started. You see that little circle? There we go. Then once again, I can cut that shape out. Okay. Or I can copy and paste it. Once again, then I just have that shape. Okay? That's the Polygon Lasso tool. Next up, we're actually going to use the Magnetic Lasso tool, and this is probably everyone's favorite. The magnetic tries to tell the difference between the yellow and the black. So if you click here and start to go around, you'll notice that it's kind of creating these little anchor points. And even if I screw up a little bit, you can see that for the most part, it's doing a pretty decent job of tracing out this Batman. Now, if you go too crazy, you'll notice where I made some mistakes on purpose, it kind of freaked out. But as long as you stay pretty close, it's kind of like spinning yarn around it. Photoshop can tell the difference between the black and the yellow, and it's kind of auto tracing for you. Some places you have to help it out by clicking when there's weird angles. But for the most part, it does a fairly decent job. And then you have to close it. It makes a selection. Now that looks much nicer than the lasso or the Polygon Lasso tool. Okay, and then when I shift it, it cuts it out perfectly. Okay, or if I do Command C, Command V, notice it pastes to layer 1. And there is the Batman for you. You'll notice there's a couple mistakes. I made those on purpose because I wanted to show you another step coming up. So the lasso does a pretty decent job. I want you to go ahead and try to cut out the bat as best you can. Okay. The next tool we're going to talk about is actually called the Magic Wand tool. And the first tool you'll see is the Quick Select, but I want you to go to Magic Wand. Magic Wand, just like in Illustrator, selects everything that's the same. So if I click on the bat, notice that everything that is black in this shape has already been selected. So I'm going to move it over just a second when the computer catches up because it's recording as we do this. And there you go, it just took the black. Similarly, I can copy and paste. We'll look over here in a second and you'll get layer 1. And on layer 1, I've just got the black. Now the Magic Wand was really easy because all of the black is not different shades, it's all just one. Okay. So Magic Wand selects anything. If I want to get rid of the yellow, I just click on the yellow and I can move that. Now, aside from simply just cutting stuff and moving it around, there's actually a benefit to isolating something. Let's say I wanted to change the color of this yellow from yellow to any other color that I want. So I would use the Magic Wand and I would choose the yellow and then pick any old color from my finder here. Maybe I want green. And then if I take my brush, you're going to notice something. As I start to color, it's leaving the black parts alone and it's only coloring inside that selection. That selection keeps me from coloring anywhere except for inside that selection. So if I take the Magic Wand and this time I select the bat, now only the black parts of the picture are selected. And now I pick something else like pink for whatever reason. Now when I start to color, you'll notice that it's only inside the parts that are selected, the black parts. Okay? So that's kind of the benefit. What I'd like you to do is use the square and the lasso, the polygon magnetic, and the Magic Wand to mess around with this Batman logo.